Because you think about it, your legs rub together when you walk. No matter how skinny you are, when you're in a fursuit, they rub. And you wear a lot of fur right there in the crotch area. That's the area that's going to get worn out a lot. Your tail's going to take a lot of abuse too, and I don't mean it like that. And get your dirty mind out of the gutter.
You're the one saying your crotch and your
Not that
tail.
kind of performance.
You're the one saying your crotch and your tail gets the most abuse.
Well, it's just the thing about it. Kids are pulling on your tail constantly. You always get tail, like you get tail pullers. What 80 actually has here, she has an elastic here, so it has a little bit of give to it before it actually hurts. Most fursuits, most fursuits nowadays that I have seen have the tail separately from the suit. It's actually on a belt under the wearer's body, or under the suit on the body. That's what I meant. So anyway, okay, we'll look at Mr. Fox Dragon here. He's gonna have this nice shaped tail. He's gonna have to wear a belt underneath this thing. There is no way you can sew that to the suit and not have the weight of it drag the suit down. You do that, you're gonna have wrinkles all over the place, and you're gonna look like your pants are hanging down around your ankles. So he's gonna have a belt underneath here to hold that up. Take this kind of stuff into effect. If he wants to go with this design, he knows he's going to have trouble sitting, he's going to have trouble walking. This is going to be basically a stand-up suit. Depending on what the tail is made out of and how it's made, you may be able to make it collapsible where you can either tuck it around him, if it's like stuffed, like 80s is. If it's stuffed, it will not stand out rigid like that. You can sit sideways. I've actually have had characters where I have to do that with my sweet tart character because I just sit sideways in chairs because that tail is huge.
Yeah, I got this.
Yeah, you tilt it or you sit like that.
Yeah, pretty
And
much.
you take that into effect. A lot of people don't think of these kind of things when you're designing a fursuit.
Yeah, you got it.
You have to actually think about how you're going to move, how you're going to sit. Here's the tough part: how you're going to pack it. I mean, how many of you guys live within like 2 to 3 hour driving distance of cons? You do. Like if you're around here. But what if you're going to Further Confusion or Anthrocon? You have to fly. Especially action packers are great. Action packers, that's what I use. They're spectacular. Your tub is underneath the table if that's what you're looking for. On the front side. Okay, she's just going to go underneath it. These are good for short distances. I would not recommend flying with one of these. You're not, sweetie, you're not a Santa Fox. Only Santa Fox has been able to get in one of those things.
Oh my goodness.
If you've ever seen him do it, it's pretty darn impressive. Of course, he's little and skinny enough. Yeah, you just kind of fold him up and put him in there. These are. Don't get into it that way. Try passing airport security like this. These are great if you want to take the time to actually drill a hole through the lid into the base of this thing so you can put a lock through it. If you're going to use these, they need to be lockable. Anything you fly with needs to be lockable. The 24-gallon action packer is the largest action packer you can take on a plane without incurring oversized fees. I strongly recommend them. They're really, really sturdy, and you can get quite a bit packed in them. Now, but think of this, when you're designing, a lot of people don't think about this until they actually get it. How am I going to pack this thing? I've actually made that mistake myself. My fennec head here, done by Latin Vixen, I did not take into effect the ears when I commissioned her. She's actually difficult to get into an action packer without crushing those ears because they do not fold. These are actually, they're rigid. They have a little bit of give, but I can't fold them flat against the head. And if I bend them, they're permanently bent. Horns, well, horns can be, you can get around it. You can either make them out of foam. Personally, every character I've ever done with horns, I've either carved them out of foam and made a pattern on a vinyl to actually slide over it. Those are bendable. Those are great, especially when you're working with kids. You can do claws the same way. Or make them out of vinyl and stuff it good and hard with all sorts of, polyfill foam shavings.
Yeah, mine's gonna go in there.
Yeah.
Very, very specific way. There's no way you get the horn.
Actually, what I've seen folks do is, anybody familiar with Mistletoe, the bunny? You met Mistletoe. Mistletoe has these wonderful stand-up ears, and they're nice and rigid. They stay right up the top of her head. She's designed a way that they clip into the top of her head using like the backpack clips. And she's just absolutely brilliant. She just goes clip and takes them off and packs them in the action packer when she's done. She has no problem traveling with that suit. Feel free to get creative with this kind of stuff. Play with them if you're going to be building them. If not, you can always ask your builder if they have a way to either make parts removable or if they have a way to get them collapsible for travel. Packing with bears, traveling with really big tails is hard because if they're, again, rigid to stand out, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting them folded up in an action packer to fly with. You do not want to incur oversized fees on a plane. That's the worst thing. And how many people have heard what the airlines are getting ready to do?
What?
They're getting ready to crack down on one oversized bags, and they're getting ready to crack down on the amount of baggage you can take with you without getting fees. They're gonna, like, I know United has just started doing it. Is it United or Continental? I think it's United.
Several. United, yeah, there's several that only
Yeah,
allow
but
one
they're
bag.
knocking it down to one, and without having, then you have to pay extra fees, so take that into effect. If you're going to actually ship it, yeah, exactly, it's expensive, you're gonna pay like a couple $100 to ship just a suitcase. You may want to consider actually shipping it ahead of you. That's a whole nother. Okay, so we know what our character's gonna look like. Say, Sly, it wants to do kids parties. Why, I don't know. He just wants to do kids parties.
Because
He's
only
done.
fostering like
80's worked with kids before. Come here, 80, let me see your claws. Okay, because 80 works with children. 80 does have claws. 80 has very soft claws, which do not have hard points, and they fold when touched, so she doesn't actually scratch somebody. When my Hellcat piece comes up here, nobody's actually seen Hellcat because I've taken her to maybe 2 cons. Hellcat has 3-inch claws on her hand paws. They are hard plastic and rigid. Again, I did not think about this when I commissioned jacks for them. They look fabulous. They are sharp, and I have drawn blood on people without meaning to. And you feel really, really bad when you meant to pat somebody on the head and you give them a scalp wound. This is not fun. Yeah, you just can't really know when these things happen. I strongly suggest if you have sharp claws, blunt them before you go to a con. If you don't hurt somebody, you will hurt yourself. You have to take this stuff into effect. In the future, I've actually, if I have a critter with long claws, I started off as a cosplayer. So I started doing Digimon and things like that. I did a Renamon suit. If anybody's familiar with the Renamon character, it's the fur family, should. Renamon has really big claws on her hands and her feet. I've actually, because I was trying to avoid the Hellcat incident, I actually made them out of vinyl and stuffed them good and hard so they stayed rigid, they look good, but they collapse when they touch somebody so that you don't actually claw the heck out of somebody. So you take that into effect when you design. Getting back to colors, I mentioned he was going to be blue. Okay? Your character is blue, you're going to have a hard time finding that color. The most common fake fur colors are going to be natural colors. Because the fur industry for making coats and things like that, that's what they use. They are the major driver for fake fur. That color is, especially the rainbows, those are hard to find. You can run into them occasionally, and when you do find them, they cost you a pretty penny. An arm and a leg. Yeah, good grays are really hard to find. This is the most common gray you'll find. This is the Monterey Mills Cubby. It's called a gray frost. It actually has a darker undercoat. It has light colored frosted tips. You can get this from CR's Crafts. You can get them from Monterey Mills Direct. A lot of places, when they carry fake fur, what they're going to carry is Monterey Mills. It's just the most common. It's a good thick fur. Actually, this is another thing I recommend when you're looking for fur. This is a Walmart find. Right around Halloween, you can start finding really nice fake furs at Walmart. They start stocking them usually about late July, early August.
And then they disappear quickly.
If you find them and you like it, buy everything they have. If you can afford to and you know you're going to be needing it in the future, you know you need 3 yards, don't just buy 3 yards, buy 6. Because eventually you're going to need to replace those pieces. Hand paws and feet paws take a lot of abuse. You wear out that fur very, very quickly. Within a year, I wore out one of my partial suits because I use a very cheap fur and I have to replace it already after a year. You shouldn't have to do that after a year. Typically, you should only have to replace, if you're only wearing the cons, suit should last you probably about 2 or 3 years before you have to start replacing areas, the worn areas. That's why you want to have extra fur on hand, because when these are made, fur is not dyed. Fur is actually made, all this stuff is made from plastic. These are stretched acrylic fibers. They start from a plastic solid that's heated and stretched. That's why when you put these in the dryer, they melt. You don't want to ever do that. Okay, those have to be, the color has to be put in there from the beginning process. That's why dye lots vary.